name is Karen, and I'm helping drive growth and product marketing at oidlabs.com. Oid Labs is dedicated to building innovative full-stack AI companions for the legal tech space, aiming to improve productivity and streamline processes. Today, we're diving into the impact of AI on the legal industry with an attorney in the field. We're joined by Greg Testa, founder of By Design Law. Greg brings a wealth of experience in business law, technology law, and data privacy. His firm helps businesses navigate complex legal landscapes with a focus on compliance and regulatory challenges. Today, we'll explore how AI is transforming legal practices, particularly in areas like data privacy, contract management, and compliance. Thank you for being here, Greg.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Let's get started with a little bit more about your background and your firm. So your background spans IT consulting, finance, and regulatory compliance before transitioning into law. Mm-hmm. What inspired this shift, and how do you feel your previous experiences have shaped your approach to legal practice?
So my background, as you correctly point out, is in the IT consulting space, and also have experience in finance and a couple other compliance areas as well. Worked a lot in the regulatory law, so Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, those areas as well, and was really exposed to the intersection of technology and law, and also as it applies to business. So I had always thought about moving into law, and then finally did so probably later in my career than I expected it to be, but it's been worthwhile. And that's what we hope to bring in with my law firm, is that experience in that area, in those areas, to make it basically provide a little more hands-on experience than what I think you might be able to get in sort of the generic type of law firms.
And what led you to establish By Design Law? And how does your firm's approach differ from traditional law firms? What makes your model stand out in today's legal landscape?
We sort of look at the intersections of each of those areas that we practice. So the business law, the contract law, the intellectual property law, artificial intelligence law, data privacy, and cyber, all sort of commingle in there. And we look at a lot of our tech startups as clients. We look at entrepreneurs who are in the tech industry, established companies that are looking at technology. And the more pervasive that technology comes into, we feel that our law firm can actually help them out and sort of grow and develop that technology. As I said before, we also have the hands-on experience with these areas in terms of driving the compliance, the policies that need to be adopted to basically have responsible use of this technology, whether it be used internally or if it's going to be made available to the public. The reason I developed By Design Law is also just basically that I found that a lot of law firms don't have this type of specialty in there, so we're trying to fit that niche market, so to speak.
That's very interesting. And it's precisely this background that we thought would make you a great guest to come on and talk to us about, AI in the legal landscape. So getting into that, how do you envision AI reshaping business law practices, particularly in areas like contract drafting, compliance, and intellectual property?
Okay, so I think you've already seen a lot of the impact that technology is having, particularly around contract drafting, but also contract management as well, particularly with the advent of blockchain. It's usually used in an area really around Bitcoin and non-fungible tokens and things like that. You have seen it a lot more with what they call smart contracts now, where basically you can build a contract, if there needs to be adjustments made. The blockchain will basically show those transactions, and it'll actually give you a really good audit on those types of transactions around the contract itself. Follows everybody's rights and obligations. As the obligation being met, you can track that as well, but it tracks in real time. If you take AI and merge that in with that, though, you're getting a lot more of that technology in there, with the blockchain providing that auditability of the contract, and driving the smart contracts, but you also have the AI that's basically going to be looking at the regulatory landscape, looking at different conditions out there, and monitoring and assessing whether or not that contract is there. And you're taking a lot of things that would be done with a lot of arms and legs, I think, in traditional lawyers, so to speak, and not to say that this is going to ever replace them, at least anytime soon, but it makes it easier to basically amalgamate all this information and track it against those terms and conditions that are embedded in a contract, whether it's, drafting, but also particularly, I guess, the management of it as well. In terms of business law, it's sort of the same thing as well. We're seeing a little bit of the AI impact from a public sphere, where some of the basic things that we like to help the clients out with, such as business formation and things like that are being driven by AI. People are going out more comfortable now with Chat GPT and the more commercially available ones, and trying to basically do things themselves. There are some pitfalls with that, but it's trying to, it's not anymore where somebody has to actually search and figure out where to go. They can actually just go and prompt, hey, how do I do this? And they'll get a response from something like ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, basically telling them how to go about that. So we're seeing it both within internally, in terms of the work streams that are being impacted from the law firm, but also from our clients as well. They're coming in with a little more information than we had seen before, and a lot of ChatGPT. Not to say it's all accurate at this point, but they are coming in with a little more ammunition than we have seen in prior years.
And what do you see as the key benefits of AI for law firms in handling complex data sets and streamlining client interactions?
So I think that's what I alluded to before. Instead of like you take a contract, for example, and there's maybe some really thick, complex contracts out there, things like terms of use and things like that for maybe software technology. In trying to understand all that, you can basically take a document, feed it into something like AI, and the technology could potentially go and give you all the information that you need, goes and parses that information out, gets the relevant information that you're looking for, and then applies the logic to it, says, is this accurate, and basically help you find out more about that, recommends alternative terms to it, things like that as well. But in terms of getting that large data set out there and trying to figure out what to do with it, the AI is actually accelerating that. So, whereas you would have to get data scientists before to sort of understand how to use the data and everything else, AI is coming in sort of replacing that as well. And that's probably going to be the gist of most of my conversation here, is how this impact is going to replace a lot of, I think, what we did in the past with the traditional arms and legs and sort of people doing this.
So we've been discussing, a couple of different points and how AI can assist and or replace or automate workflows and admin work or even more detailed work. But I want to go the challenges that law firms can face. I can think of challenges that based on what you've mentioned, for individuals who, in terms of making sure that the information they're receiving is going to have good sources. Not everything is always accurate, needs to be double checked. Mm-hmm. But I want to, for right now, just to focus on law firms. So what are the primary hurdles law firms face when trying to integrate AI tools, especially in areas like business law and data privacy, and how can these challenges be overcome?
So I think one, it's just anything that you introduce, there's a balance with any technology. It's a balance between three things. It's people, a process, and technology, or the system. And whenever you increase something on one, the others sort of have to adjust with that. They either increase or decrease, or they have to get better, or they have to compensate for something that might be a deficiency on one of the other ones there. So, in prior roles, I've seen clients that had really good people. They knew the technology and everything, but the top technology may be antiquated because they weren't getting the funding. So therefore, you're emphasizing more on the people, the process itself, but the technology is wanting. When you introduce AI to a law firm, it's going to have that same type of impact on there, where you're going to bring in something that's going to basically replicate and automate a lot of the work streams that you already have that maybe an associate was doing before, such as legal research, that you're also looking at like drafting, simple documents or legal memos or things like that, or give me a summary of case law type of thing, where because of that, it's going to affect that people part of it there, where instead of maybe a senior attorney or partner going and asking one of these staff to do something, you're going to have a situation where you could just prompt it right then and there, and the AI tool will give it that as well. Now, the attorney or the partner are still going to have to look at that and make sure the information is accurate, but you're going to have to do that anyway if you're getting it from a more junior resource, so to speak. So I think that's going to be the over impact. Because that's going to come, you're going to be a little bit of resistance from the staff as well, because it's sort of reminiscent about how if you think about it in sort of the automotive industry, when the automation came into it, instead of somebody sitting there putting in window screens into cars and everything, you're now going to have it where, there's a robot that's going to be doing it. It's a similar thing in a law firm. Instead of having an individual do it, you might have an AI tool that's going to do that. What I think is going to have to happen, though, is you're going to have to get a staff that's very comfortable with that technology, knows how to prompt it. I've seen a couple of the leaders from the tech industry say something about prompt jockeys or something like that. That's going to be sort of like a big thing. Instead of these engineers who are going to basically be able to understand how to create the input into the AI tools to basically get them what they want from a generative standpoint. And I think that's going to happen in the law firms as well. You're going to have this paradigm shift where instead of having individuals being recruited every year to come in and sort of have this army, you're going to be able to leverage that. The alternative side is that, instead of, because the human component of law firms is a large cost, that usually gets passed on to the clientele. So the advantage that you may have with AI is that you may be able to reduce your cost. You may be a little more cost competitive in terms of rates and everything, and then pass it on to your clientele as well. So that's a possibility that it could have, not just from a internal standpoint, but also for the clients that it serves.
So, by the way, I really liked your comparison to the automotive industry. But would you have any advice for law firms in regards to how to, balance out the resistance that they may be feeling from the team, as well as for the learning curve that attorneys or their team might be experiencing when they are introduced to an AI assistant, because not everyone is going to be have a good technological background, and people have a small amount of time. So if you could, what about any advice for that?
So I think it's going to start before you get into the law practices anymore. So the tricky part with the law and the industry around law is that it's very conservative. It's very resistant to change. There are still judges and lawyers and what have you that still like going to the traditional paper-bound books and such, to get their law. Whereas, it's advanced so much that you don't need these walls and walls and shelves of books anymore. You can basically get this into a database that can give you all this information, and it's easier, but people are comfortable with that. I think you're going to have the same thing with the artificial intelligence. It's going to be this paradigm shift where people need to get comfortable with it. It's going to be an integral part of what they're going to have to do, regardless of the functionality that's going to have in that particular law department, whether it's just helping out with contract drafting or it's going to be helping out with legal research or memos or what have you. You're going to need a staff that's going to be very, very savvy with that. To get to that, I think it's going to have to go back also with the law schools as well. The law schools are going to have to start teaching this. They're going to have to start bringing this in. I think they've done a good job with trying to keep up with the technology and everything. It's just dependent, of course, on who you're going to work for after the law school period. But that's going to be the key thing, is how do they use this, and some of these providers are already pretty good at that. I mean, the LexisNexis, the Westlaws, and other ones that are, there and have a presence at these law schools are going to be pushing this AI technology and trying to get the students to adapt to it. There is a resistance, I know that, from the professors and from the lecturers about use of AI in their course curriculum, because the students are going to use this as opposed to actually doing the research and just going to have that there. So that's going to be the challenge with it. But the usage of it and the positive usage of it for research or what have you, that can help you with your work, I think is going to be necessary. And then once they come in there, that hopefully will soften the blow a little bit when they come on board to the law firm. For the current staff that comes on, that is already in the law firms, it's going to have to go through effective change management. It's going to have to go through training. It's going to have to go through some type of assessment with its individuals. What kind of training do they need? Some people are going to be savvier with this and ready to do this more than others are going to be doing this. Promotions on it, making it competitive, and then setting out a timeline of how fast you want those to basically be adopted. What are the goals? What are the measurable goals that you can have of that? And then otherwise, I mean, it's going to basically be, ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be a sink or swim type of mentality. It's, somebody's going to have to basically adopt it. If the firm is dedicated to getting this, or a law firm is getting this, they're going to have to basically, make sure that its workforce is going to be ready to adopt it and ready to take it on, as opposed to resisting it as well. At the end of the day, a law firm, it's obligated to the clients, it's obligated to make sure they have good advice and representation. So that's going to ultimately matter. If that AI tool is going to help them do that, I think they're going to basically be all on board with that. And that's going to be, I guess, the ultimate mission statement they're going to have to push forward to get everybody to come on board.
Part of this resistance to change, I think, might also be due to skepticism, especially around the AI's reliability. What other misconceptions or common misconceptions do you encounter in your area regarding AI?
So in terms of misconceptions, it depends on the type of AI. I mean, we use AI in my firm for an unlimited basis just to help out with some research and, getting some information together. And we still fact check it like crazy and make sure that the cases are basically providing what they want. I think I was telling your colleague that we did get some information about Washington state law that brought in a California statute for some reason in its analysis. So I think the perceptions of it is one, in a negative way, is that the AI tools want to please. They want it's platform centric. You want people to adopt the platform that that they have, whether it be a Chat GPT or a more proprietary tool. So you want people to come to that, and not if you're LexisNexis, you don't want somebody else going to Westlaw or anything else like that. So it's competitive, because the more you have people adopting your platform, the more you can have what we used to call, in one of my old jobs, sockets. In other words, you can add on different things to that. So there is an incentive to keep them on board. And I think the AIs has been guilty so far of trying to make everybody happy by just trying to find some information. Like if you ask him something, it's going to say, oh, sure, it can give you this, it can give you that, and it may not always be the right answer of what's needed on there. And it could be, leading, potentially an attorney down the wrong way, or even a lay user the wrong way if they're using something like Chat GPT and not understanding that the tool is just trying to keep them on board. I know that a lot of the more commercial ones, such as Chat GPT and Gemini, have been accused of this, just for the simple reason that we talked about before with that platform adoption. That ChatGPT and OpenAI want to keep you on their platform, don't want you going to Grok or one of the other ones. So they're going to try and keep you happy. That's the biggest misconception there. And I think the more proprietary ones are a little bit better with their information, a little bit more nuanced. The ones that we use, are more closed environment, just specific to law. As it would say, a lot of people, I think, understand that you're not supposed to use AI for, legal advice. You're not using it for medical advice, things like that. But people still will fall if they're not familiar with that as well. Internally, I would say you hit the nail on the head with the accuracy of the information. Is it relevant to what I'm asking? Is it supporting my argument, or is it just throwing something out there? And that's where you need to have that attorney training go through, actually understand the case law that it might be giving to you, or if there's any secondary sources or anything like that that it's referencing, dig into that, understand how the judge or the judges are interpreting this information and ruling on it, as opposed to just taking it for granted. So I think that's not so much a misconception. I think it's just, there is that famous case in New York where an attorney basically used AI to write a legal brief to a judge, and none of the cases were real. So I think that kind of bad press is also getting people concerned about using, but they're getting better with the technology. And the thing about AI to remember, it's not just a static type of algorithm. It's actually growing. It's learning from its mistakes as well. So it realizes, like, okay, I can't do this, or I can't do that. And I think if you ever reduce that amount of trying to, the people pleasing type of attributes with it, and get more hardcore information on it, I think you're going to find more adoption to it, more more readiness to adopt it as well, and willingness to use it, as opposed to the resistance we have now. And it's also scary. I think there's a lot of things in the press right now about AI that is going to kill jobs. And with any technology change, it's going to happen. There's going to be a paradigm shift. People are going to have to adopt to it. It's not going to go away, whether it be the automation within the car industry that we talked about earlier. There had to be an adoption. You're seeing it right now with, potential new, move to renewable energies, things like that. There's going to be a paradigm shift where people are going to have to get new skills, get new work skills, and adopt to them as well. And I see no difference with AI, whether it be in the legal industry, as we're talking about today, or if it's in medicine or any other type of thing, accounting, anything that's really white collar, I think is going to be greatly impacted by AI.
But just as with the automotive industry, it did replace some jobs, but new jobs were also created. So for example, with what you were just saying about law firms needing to internally also provide the training, see what skill level their teams are on, I can very easily see that they may need maybe a consultant to come in and not just to do the internal training, but to help people catch up in a pace that the law firm that works for the law firm. So while it might be replacing some or automating other roles, it can also create the need for new types of consultants or jobs to come in.
Right. That was my old job, basically trying to get companies to adopt new technologies. Did a lot around SAP and a couple other large scale financial systems in prior roles. And the part was also implementing it and working with the end users to make sure that the data was correct. But it was also the big hurdle of getting used to the new process of adopting it. That you have maybe a prior financial process that did it a certain way, but you take something like SAP where they have a certain discrete methodology, you have to adapt to that as well. So definitely, I think there's going to be there's an industry that's created with every change that comes through, and that tidal wave of change is to do that. And I would see the consultants not only just as you were saying with helping these companies get on board with this, but also implementing it, understanding how to use it, developing custom reports, things like that can actually, help them out, not only just from getting the end users to come on board, but also making it much more efficient.
Since you've done that consulting work, and earlier you mentioned about an AI in a closed environment for law firms and also attorneys with their own practice. I wanted to ask, because I can also see AI with an AI assistant that has guardrails in place to, not be taking, from every single source. Like you were saying, in Washington, they pulled from a California decision or statute. So do you have any advice or a couple of things that you would suggest to people who are looking to have an AI legal assistant to keep in mind, like any general pointers of what to look out for to find one that is right for them?
And this would be from a law firm perspective or an attorney's perspective?
I mean, we can listen to both, whichever you prefer to.
So I would say, I'll take it from the general perspective first. I get a lot of potential clients coming to me saying that they've consulted with ChatGPT and Gemini and what have you. And they're getting some good information, but they don't know how to put it together. I mean, I heard one attorney describe law as basically a puzzle, and you have different pieces and you have to figure out how they all fit together, how you construct your argument. You also have to know how to do certain things like court procedures and local rules with the courts and things like that. Some of the AI may not tell you exactly how to do that unless you know how to ask for it, or if you're trained in it. And at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to have an AI bot or what have you represent you in the court of law. So and that's the licensure that comes in with that. So I would say on that end, the guardrails, there's disclaimers that are out there, to tell the general public you can't rely upon this, and you should not rely upon this for legal advice. And I think that those systems do a good job of telling you that as well. You need to consult with an attorney and everything like that. But there are those who are going to ignore it and run with it, unfortunately. Now, in terms of the other side of the coin with the law firms and stuff, the closed systems, I mean, you already have this adoption of AI by the general platforms that have already been providing, the case law and the what we call the legal libraries, like LexisNexis, the Westlaws, Law Panthers, things like that, that have amassed a lot of information, have access to the court records, have access to the secondary resources and what have you. And then you have this basically what I would say that is a closed system there. You have that access to it, whereas the general public may not be able to access every court record that's out there. You have Trella and you have a couple others that will provide that. In Washington State we have Odyssey but it doesn't provide the documents and everything like that. To do that you have to pay a fee to get that and everything else. So that closed environment already is I think decent, that it's basically limited to basically information that they have access to. Whereas, the AI tool helps you that, maybe you weren't searching right, doing your research and everything like that and getting the right case law. And it's just, did I put the right join in terms of an and or an or argument when I was looking for it? Versus now, if you type in AI, it can give you a general sense of where you need to look. It won't give you everything, but it'll give you what you need to look at. So I think the guardrails are good in terms of that closed environment that is focusing just on the law, the case law that they have, the documents that they have access to, and so on. They're not going to pull things like that. And they actually have a setting on there too, as well as that you can filter out things that have not been decided, that things that and you can have other filters on if cases that may have had an adverse opinion about it later on, in a subsequent decision. You can filter things out on that as well. So there are already some guardrails in there. It's just basically knowing how to use them. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's going to be this professional skepticism from an attorney basically saying, like, I don't know, I'm familiar with that case law and that doesn't make sense the way that the output is given to me. I need to go and take a look at that and research it as well. But if say the guardrails are, just ways to that closed system itself, you already have a very recognized, provider of this case information that you can rely upon on that. And, but there's no difference, I would say, in hindsight, where me doing it the traditional way, where I would go through and try and find this research, I have just as much as the same possibility of an error as the AI tool would as well. It's just basically, at the end of the day, I want to make sure I catch myself and, either way it's produced and figure out if this is really telling me what I need to know on it.
So we've gone over a few of the challenges, but also we've touched on a couple of areas where AI can be useful, like you just said, in research, provided that they've been checked afterwards. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to shift the focus a little bit into how can law firms ensure that they maintain the human touch within their processes, especially when AI is maybe handling a lot of the routine work?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I mean, I think it's in all aspects. It's not just the attorney interactions and things like that. But I think it's also just when they initially contact a law office to basically inquire about their matter and see if it's something that the office can help out with. A lot of in terms of AI, it's not just the I guess the practice platform that's the discussion, but also things such as the intake process. How's that done? And the receptionist that answers the phone if somebody telephones your office as well. There's a move and ways to use AI technology for both of those. And it's not a bad thing, but there's a lot of people who have never contacted a lawyer before. It's a scary thing for them that they have this legal issue that they don't know how to address. If somebody is suing them, they need representation. They don't know which way to turn. It's the first time they may be talked to an attorney in their life, and it's a scary proposition. So I think that human interaction is key for those types of people. Also, I would say, and not to date myself or anybody else, but there's a certain segment of the population that just isn't comfortable with the technology. They just don't like using it. So if they go on the phone and they hear an AI bot, or even go onto a website and have an AI chat bot, trying to interact with them, they're not going to like it. They want to pick up the phone and talk to somebody and find out, is this something that I need to be concerned about? What are my, do you understand what my rights and obligations are? And is this something you can help me out with? So I think that initial contact, whether it be the intake or the receptionist service, my firm still has somebody answering the phone for us. So from that aspect, where we want to have somebody with that human touch, making sure that the client their needs are addressed and they're getting us right to the right people on that. And the same thing with the intake. Right now, we have the receptionist that will do that, but we also have a form that will bring that in as well. AI would be good in terms of the back end, in terms of automating that information and putting it into initial case file and taking that so we don't have to enter in by hand, figuring out things as well, maybe giving us initial case assessments, and pricing and things like that in terms of the fees. But, I think that would be the key thing. And overall, there's that whole area of the unpracticed or unauthorized practice of law, or UPL, where you have this question of whether or not AI could ever replace an attorney. Like I said before, you still need a human being to come in and represent you in court. They're not going to allow an AI bot to come in and represent you, or this chat bot to represent you on that. The judges are still going to be human as well, as far as I can tell. So you're not going to be able to get away from that human element entirely on that. The same way that in the medical profession, you still have to have that licensure as a doctor or a nurse to basically provide diagnosis or treatment of an individual. So you still need that licensed attorney to provide that service. Where I can see it, it's just, like I said, it's affecting all things. It's going to be the smaller, routine tasks that are going to basically be impacted by it. But at the end of the day, you're still going to need that person has a professional background and that licensure to basically represent that person. And I think that's going to be the saving grace with it, is that you still need, at the end of the day, somebody to basically do a lot of the tasks that are in the industries.
A previous guest had shared that he sometimes uses AI to practice arguments with and to get questions fed back to him. And we've touched a little bit today about how AI is evolving, it's learning. I know that it's not there yet, most likely, but do you see AI ever playing a role in being able to predict legal outcomes? For example, in the situation that I just mentioned, that someone may be trying to practice his argument, try to predict how the decision could be made, or at least forecasting what the likelihood of success would be.
I mean, it's a good question. In terms of predictability, I don't know if it's going to basically give a definite, way that the verdict would drop. I mean, at the end of the day, judges are human beings. They're going to be influenced by a lot of different things. You give them, all the benefit of the doubt that you're looking at the facts and what you present and the best argument within the court. But at the end of the day, the judges are the ones that are going to basically make the decisions on that, and you sometimes never know which way they're going to turn with it. I do think it's good in terms of probability. I guess that would probably be the better word that I'm looking at, right? What is the probability of this case succeeding based on this information here? And this is the judge, and this is how they've determined things. You can maybe feed that into an AI tool and figure out what the probability of that outcome would be. But then, to your point earlier, you could say, well, what are the counter arguments? What have they been? And what, if a judge, found this to be much, the preponderance of evidence be, something here versus there, in this case, what were the decisions? What are the probability of your chances on that? By jurisdiction, they're going to have different outcomes as well. So what's what does that factor into it? So I think that's going to be there. I do like the idea, though, that you might be able to have sort of a mock trial with the AI, that you could basically give it the information on there, and then the AI acts as basically this devil's advocate, so to speak, where you throw the arguments at it and it's like, well, that's a good argument, but here's what I'm going to throw back at you, and gets you better prepared for that trial. So that's possible as well. So I don't think it's going to actually give you any predictability on this. I think that there's a lot of keys where some people are going to look at and say, yeah, this is what's going to happen with it. But in a lot of instances, I think it's be more about what is the probability of success with it? What are the factors that are being baked into what are the prior decisions? What's the jurisdictional stance on this? And then, what's my probability of winning on this?
And also that touches back, also something you just mentioned, touches back a little bit to keeping of the human touch, even with using AI, is not just having a license, someone who is licensed to go and represent you, but also what you were mentioning, you don't know how a judge is going to rule. So being able to look at the judge, try to read what's going on, maybe based on body language or how the direction of the actual case is going in the moment. I think that's also another great point of where you still can need to use your instincts and not be relying on you wouldn't be relying on AI.
And the other part of it, you don't know what the judge is going to ask you in that court. I mean, they could come out of left field and say, "Hey, here's something that I didn't anticipate. I need to, be on my feet with doing that." So you never quite know what that judge is going to do, and it's hard to be. I mean, lately in the press, you're hearing things about, well, this judge was appointed by this president, this judge was appointed by that president, so but they're deciding differently, and the press goes into sort of a panic about that. But it's not surprising because a lot of the judges, whether at the district level or the lower court level, I say federal, state, they always have this judicial review, that's going to happen there, where the case could be appealed, and another court's going to be reviewing how the judge basically decided that. They're going to look at certain factors and things like that, and say, did the judge miss anything? Did they look over anything? So judges have to be very accurate with what they're doing. They take their job very seriously on that. So as a result of that, you're never going to be able to quite entirely predict how they're going to come across. They're going to do their job and do it quite well. So.
And we've also touched today on that clients can come to law attorneys and law firms already having asked questions to Gemini or ChatGPT, and we've talked about how that's not really accurate for most of the time in this case in the area of law. So what can lawyers do when they are receiving someone who's probably already had some background and, it's 50-50 that whatever they've been told is going to be accurate, and something like you can say, oh yeah, that's okay or not? How would they, how would they approach the relationship? Would it be different from someone who did not?
If you have a potential client coming, so, I mean, I always take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of clients, even before AI, were doing, I have a lot of clients coming to me saying that they've done research on certain things, and they'll find something, and I want to say it's confirmation bias a lot of times, where they're coming to you and saying, like, I have this, and this is, I found this, and, and some of the information that they're using to rely upon it may not be applicable because it's outside your jurisdiction, maybe even outside the country, so to speak, so it's not really going to work, and they don't quite understand how evidentiary or evidence would work in a court, whether that be allowed in the first place, or how expert witnesses are used, things like that they don't understand. So even if they came in with a lot of information, I usually like to start from scratch, and if they have some stuff I can use, that's great. And if they're already familiar with it, it's great. But it's not always going to be this, I'm going to rely upon everything that they're providing me, or take it for granted that they're providing me. It's always this trust but verify type of approach you need to have with it, because at the end of the day, you want to provide the best representation and advice you can to them. Where I do see that is basically maybe on the transactional side to some extent, where people are doing their research. They understand, like, if they want to form an LLC, for example, they know how to do it. They go to the Secretary of State, pay the fee, and they'll get a certificate of formation within a couple of days on that. And it's really that those first steps are there, but then it's like, okay, well, do you understand about how to get your license, how to get your EIN, things like that you may have to walk them through it. So there are coming through with a couple of things that I think are more on the basic level with that, which you can use already and sort of build upon with it. But I would not do it if there's any potential, like, say, litigation on that, because that's where it's going to get really, really tricky, because people seem to think that they watch television, they seem to think it's going to be the slam dunk when they walk in. And I mean, and there's also people who seem to think that other I guess external factors are going to weigh in on that, and the judge is going to rule in that certain way, or jury is going to rule in a certain way. And it's not always that case. It's very different. So to answer your question, summary, I would say that depends on the type of case that you have. Is transactional, maybe able to build upon some of that and use what they're providing. But for the cases that are going to involve a potential litigation, you really want to make sure that what they're providing you is going to be useful.
This kind of leads me to my next question, which is, and we sort of got into the area when we were talking about the human touch with AI. But how can law firms balance, automation with also personalized service that a client would expect? You've already mentioned at reception having someone to speak to. You talked about leading people right now through certain documents or talking through the situations that they may think are going to be relevant and not. I was wondering if we could just get more into, how to do the balance of the personalized service versus the automation.
So in terms of the balance, I going to be able to tell you what that percentage would be in terms of that balance, like how much AI do you want or automation do you want versus a personal. I would say for me, the automation piece in a firm would be sort of the back office stuff, and it's stuff that the client doesn't necessarily need to see. I think that they want to see maybe the benefits of that, where you're providing them really good quality advice, you're finding really quality work deliverable, and if AI can help people with that, at the end of the day, that's positive. If it's automation can provide it where you get a better fee arrangement for them, then that's definitely going to help them out as well. If it's something where it can automate some back end for them, where the invoice goes out automatically and the payment is done, and they get documents that they need instantly and things like that, I think that would be is good. Or even in a case where they have a simple thing where they just need to ask something, it's not available, or they need to find something on a document they can't find, the AI tool is available for them to basically do a search and find where it's relevant on the document, something like that, if the attorney's not available. But I would say on the other side, a lot of people come into a law office because they want to talk to somebody human on there, and they're trusting somebody who has that legal advice on there. People who are in the potential litigation are, again, they need the hand holding on there, and all the talk about AI is not going to resolve their fears about going into a suit, whether the plaintiff or the defendant on that. But again, that's where I would say it's more on that back end. That if you can do that, and I think the tangential effects to it, where it's better service to them, potential lower cost, more efficiencies that can benefit the service you provide them. I think that's where you would find the intersection of the two.
So now looking ahead, how do you think that AI will continue to evolve in business and technology? What changes do you foresee in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I would say that you're going to see a little bit maybe of a consolidation within the industry in general, where you have right now you have a lot of providers, but with innovative technology you have a lot of consolidation. Mergers are going to happen. Larger companies are going to buy the AI, some of these AI companies, or they're going to just grow through their investment. So that's going to be the big one. So you're going to have a smaller field of players on that as a result of it. You're still going to have, I think, more adoption by the traditional tech providers, and most, that we're talking about, like LexisNexis, Westlaw, and what have you, are going to still have that AI offering on there, as well as every other tool that comes out there that you can use on it. Even like Outlook and everything else has like Copilot now and stuff. So it's going to be on there, and it's going to be much more pervasive as a result of that. So AI is going to be pretty much everything you do on that. I think what's going to happen then is that consolidation, and you're going to get more specialized, more niche type of things, as opposed to all encompassing things that like chat GPTs and everything. You're going to get more specialty type things, and whether it's made available to the public for something that's like a WebMD for medicine, or anything like a LegalZoom that's AI for the law area. You might have it where people are much more comfortable with getting that advice from those, and so I think the law firms are going to have to get much more competitive and figure out what their differentiators are going to be. And it's what you said earlier, it's going to be that human touch. How are they going to interact with the law office? What kind of care and attention are they going to get from their attorney, so to speak, on that? So it's always comes down to the soft skills on that. And if we go back to the people, process, and technology, it's going to be relying upon more on the people, because that technology thing is going to be much more constant, I think, on there. That's where it's going to, so basically, the processes are going to be much more efficient with that, but it's going to be the differentiator going to be on the people, and the soft skills that the attorney and their offices are going to be able to provide to their clients.
You sort of also led into the final question, which was, what skills should lawyers develop to incorporate AI into their practice effectively? And also, what other resources would you recommend for firms looking to integrate legal technology or learn more about it?
Mm-hmm. So I would say, in terms of resources available, I mean, the one that I go to a lot is the AI governance section of the IAPP, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals, but they also look at AI governance in terms of mostly towards privacy. It's that, but it gives a lot of good information around that as well. The National Institute of Standards Technology gives a lot of good information around the technologies infrastructure and what should be incorporated with that. I would say, not just with AI, but I think that law firms and lawyers need to get a little bit smarter with the overall technology itself and what it can provide. And it goes back to what we said originally, is that a lot of attorneys, a lot of judges still like the old books and things like that, which is fine, but it needs to start moving along. And so instead of just being good with Microsoft Word as your technology thing, you need to start incorporating other things that can help you out with that and bring in a little bit more, whether it be an AI tool that can help you out with your research, help you out with different tasks, and help you out with your back office support, or anything else. I mean, learning something. So I was able to bring in skills I learned in consulting through Microsoft Excel and looking at macro keys and things like that into the practice to help me with my analysis and everything else. And so I think that it's not just the technology, but I think the more balance that you get and the more type of experiences and skills that an attorney can bring in, the better they're going to be, because you're going to need to basically, like I said, differentiate yourself. And that's going to be basically what you can provide to your client. How can you talk to them? I mean, I remember going to a conference, and this is privacy related, a couple of years ago, but there was a senior partner at one of the more prestigious firms who really got the name wrong for this case that the FTC was looking at around a data broker, and said it right in front of a representative from the FTC out on stage. It just showed me that they didn't quite understand what they were talking about. So you need to have these attorneys that actually understand the technology and can appreciate it, know what it means, what the underlying mean, because just like with anything else, it's going to become not only something that's part of their jobs, but it's also going to become part more of the case law that's coming across it as well. So how is artificial intelligence affecting employment through decision making? How is it affecting things like intellectual property with creative works being potentially infringed upon by that? So the more that an attorney can understand the technology and what it means and what it does, and the implications of it, I think the better service they're going to provide to their clients at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. That was very informative, and I really enjoyed learning and hearing everything that you shared with us today. So that was the end of the podcast. Is there anything you would like to share in addition that maybe we didn't touch on?
Not at this point, no. It's been a very enjoyable conversation. I mean, I think just a takeaway would be that we're still in the infancy with AI. I mean, it's sort of launched less than 2 years ago to the public, and I think everybody's scrambling to get out their AI solution at this point. I would say that one of my blog postings is about what they call AI washing, which is basically making sure that if you're signing up to an AI solution, that it's not just some marketing campaign that you're being told, that you actually have a chance to beta test it, you actually have the chance to actually use it and see if it works for for there. So that's the only sort of warning I would give to the general public about that, is just make sure that if somebody's coming to you as with an AI solution, that you actually test it before you actually sign up to, because you can get a long-term agreement that you may regret with it. But other than that, I would say that, you know, it is a tool that I think people should embrace to some extent. Is it going to replace you know, attorneys like myself? I know I certainly hope not. I don't think it will. And as we talked about, I think at the end of the day, you're still going to need that human touch point with the clients, and the clients are going to be looking for that as well. So it's going to just come down to this: how willing are you to adapt this technology to what you do every day?
Thank you so much for that. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Would you be interested in coming back again sometime?
I definitely would. Yes.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. Take care.